Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to welcome you to the first BRAWIJAYA International Conference on Business and Law held by the Doctoral Study Program outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA in Jakarta. The conference brings together academia, researchers, business, and practitioners through the topic Collaboration of Business and Law After Pandemic to Enhance Sustainable Development. I am Erin Limanto, your host for today. It's an honor to me to introduce and welcome the guests in this conference. First, the Honorable Professor Dr. Insinyur Kusmartono, as a Director of Doctoral Study Program outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA in Jakarta. The Honorable Professor Dr. Kusdi Raharjo, as a Vice Director of Academic Affairs of the Doctoral Study Program outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA. The Honorable Professor Dr. Rahmat Safaat, SHMSI, as a Vice Director of Finance and Human Resources Affairs of the Doctoral Study Program outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA. The Honorable Dr. Nurini Aprilianda, SHM as a Director of Doctoral Study Program in Legal Studies outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA in Jakarta, as well as a head of the committee in this conference. The Honorable Professor Dr. Muhammad Al-Musaddiq, MBA, as a Director of Doctoral Program in Faculty of Administrative Science outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA, Jakarta. The Honorable Ananda Sabil Hussein, PhD, as a Director of Doctoral Program in Faculty of Economics and Business outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA. We also welcome all the keynote speakers, presenters, and participants of this first BRAWIJAYA conference on business and law. Distinguished Professor Dr. Hasan Kakaya from Melbourne University, Australia, Dr. Sukarmis, as outside the main campus of Law Universitas BRAWIJAYA, Indonesia. We also welcome all the keynote speakers, presenters, and participants of this first BRAWIJAYA conference on business and law. Distinguished Professor Dr. Hasan Kakaya from Melbourne University, Australia. Last but not least, Dr. Sukarmis, as outside the main campus participants. Okay, give applause for all of us. Dear ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, allow me to read the main agenda of this conference. We will begin by singing the national anthem, addressing report from the head of the committee of the first BRAWIJAYA International Conference on Business and Law, opening speech from the director of the Doctoral Study Program outside the main campus of Universitas BRAWIJAYA, followed by the core of the seminar, documentation, and the last panel session. Distinguished guests, keynote speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to start this program with singing the national anthem. May I invite everyone to please rise for singing the national anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. For the next agenda, the head of committee will be delivering the report and welcome speech. Please warm welcome to Dr. Nurini Aprilienda SHM Hum. The floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Director of PSDKU Universitas Brawijaya in Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Insinyur Kusmartono, the Vice Director of Academic Affairs of PSDKU Universitas Brawijaya, Profesor Dr. Kusdi Raharjo, the Vice Director of Finance and Human Resource Affairs of PSDKU Universitas Brawijaya, Professor Dr. Rahmat Safaat, all the speakers, Prof. Hasan Hakaya from Melbourne University, and then Dr. Sukarmi from Universitas Brawijaya, Dr. Dery Tanti Wijaya from Boston University, Dr. Radityo Handrito from Universitas Brawijaya, all participants of the first Brawijaya International Conference on Business and Law. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Dr. Insinyur Kusmartono and all of the Vice Director, Prof. Kusdi and Prof. Rahmat Safaat, for allowing us to hold this conference. And thank you for all the speakers, Prof. Hasan Hakaya, Dr. Sukarmi, Dr. Radityo, and then Dr. Dery Tanti Wijaya for your time for joining this conference. And thank you for all the students and participants for joining today's event. This event is a response to development of social science, particularly in management, business, conference, public administration, and law, to give the real contribution in solving social problems, especially those which occur as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Moreover, there is a demand from the lecturer, the student, and then the practitioners to deliver their ideas and give solution to the problem faced by the society. This conference is held on Thursday, the 27th October 2022 in a hybrid system, which the online conference is held on Zoom and the offline conference is held in the Royal Kuningan Hotel in Jakarta. This event is joined by 30 students and then from the campus Brawijaya University and 7 participants from the public. The whole process of the event conducted in one day, which consists of an international conference and then the panel session, and the last is a proceeding publishing. That's all from me. From me, I hope this conference will be helpful for all participants and the future will be held in annually. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Nurini Aprilienda SHM Hum. We are going now to listen to the welcome speech delivered by the Director of the Doctoral Study Program outside the main campus of Universitas Brawijaya. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Dr. Insinyur Kusmartono. The floor is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The honorable invited speakers, Professor Dr. Hasan Hakaya from Melbourne University, Dr. Dery Tanti Wijaya from Boston University, USA, Dr. Radityo Handrito Putro, and Dr. Sukarmi from BRAWIJAYA University. The Vice Directors, Professor Kusdi and Professor Rahmat Safaat, and all committees of this international seminar, all participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. It is an honor for me to welcome all of you in this first BRAWIJAYA International Conference on Business and Law, which will involve a thorough discussion on business in law, and more specifically on issues related to strategies to enhance sustainable development after the pandemic era. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know that there have been so evident to show that not only in our country, but also all over the world, that the pandemic has significantly reduced the development of a country in all sectors. Some analysis, some ways have been made and discussed in many conferences and many meetings, informally or formally, and all of those discussions end up with the one solution, that development after the pandemic era has to be solved multidisciplinary. So we cannot really solve these problems that we have in our country only by a single discipline of science. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving forward to how to improve the economy of our country, how to improve the social life of our country, so that when we are discussing the issues related to the economic problems in our country, we are going to end up with the one solution that we have to discuss along this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, in this opportunity, I would like to sincere thanks to the invited speakers that I've mentioned earlier, and all participants for your contribution in this conference. And last but not least, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the committee who have been devoted their time to prepare this conference and made the conference possible to happen. As I've been asked by the committee to open officially this seminar by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I declare that the first BRAWIJAYA International Conference on Business and Law is officially open. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Professor Kusmartono. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to main agenda of our meeting. That is to hear the speech from our keynote speakers. The keynote speech will be moderated by Mrs. Nanda Saraswati, SHMH. Before beginning the first session, allow me to read the CV of the moderator. Nanda Saraswati is a law lecturer at the Faculty of Law Universitas BRAWIJAYA Indonesia under the Department of International Law. She currently teaches international law and human rights law. She is a member of the Indonesian Society of International Law Lecturers and the Indonesian Association of Human Rights Lecturers. At the moment, she is the head of the international collaboration at the International Office Universitas BRAWIJAYA and the head of the International Relations Office at the Faculty of Law Universitas BRAWIJAYA. Without any further ado, please welcome Mrs. Ananda Saraswati. The floor is yours. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati, sebelum memulai sesi utama, kami minta Bapak Ibu dan tamu undangan untuk berfoto terlebih dahulu di depan podium atau di depan stage untuk kenang-kenangan dalam forum besar ini. Dipersilakan. Kepada Bapak Ibu pimpinan dipersilahkan untuk naik ke atas panggung untuk foto sesi bersama.
Ayo, mari. Satu yang dua yang semestinya teman saya melihat kakak yang dia pengacaranya gimana terus tinggalnya di sini kayaknya mari semua agak mepet ini apa ini dibolong ya jangan dilubangi oh ya nggak kelihatan. Kameranya disingkirkan dulu. Ada kamera itu. Berdiri aja Pak, nggak kelihatan Pak. Kameranya disingkirkan. Kelihatan Pak. Kelihatan. Dua, tiga. Garing Mas.
Terima kasih kepada Bapak Ibu pimpinan dan tamu undangan yang memiliki agenda lain setelah ini dipersilakan untuk meninggalkan ruangan, diperkenankan untuk meninggalkan ruangan. Kalaupun Bapak Ibu ada waktu bisa tetap di sini untuk menikmati pembicara dari berbagai universitas, baik dalam negeri maupun luar negeri. Baik, tanpa berpanjang lebar lagi waktu dan tempat, saya persilakan kepada Ibu Moderator Nanda Saraswati untuk memimpin jalannya seminar internasional pada pagi hari ini.
Baik, thank you to Miss Irene as the Master of Ceremony today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and participants of today's international seminar. Whether you are joining us here in Jakarta or through Zoom virtually, we hope that you are here healthy and ready to attend today's seminar entitled The First BRAWIJAYA International Conference on Business and Law 2022. So it is with great pleasure for me, Nanda Saraswati, as the moderator for today's event, where there will be a presentation and later on a discussion on various fields on the collaboration of business and law after pandemic to enhance sustainable development. And today we are very grateful to be joined by 4 outstanding speakers. I invite first to come up to the podium with me is Associate Professor Dr. Sukarmi from Universitas BRAWIJAYA, Indonesia. Please give a round of applause to her. Silakan Ibu. And second is Bapak Dr. Radityo Handrito, also from Universitas BRAWIJAYA, Indonesia. Please give a round of applause. And also joining us through Zoom virtually here is Ibu Dr. Dery Tanti Wijaya from Boston University of United States of America. And last but not least is Professor Hasan Kakaya from Melbourne University, Australia. Good morning, Professor Kakaya. It is nice to see you again here. So ladies and gentlemen, each speakers today will have around 15 until 20 minutes to present their presentation. And at the end, there will be a question and answer session. So as we have seen that these wonderful speakers today, please let us make this seminar productive to exchange ideas and knowledge. Mohon Bapak Ibu bisa sangat memanfaatkan forum ini untuk nanti melakukan sesi diskusi. Therefore, you can write down your questions or feedbacks in the chat box for those of you who are joining virtually. And for those of you who are joining today, you can later raise your hand and speak directly to the speakers. And then without further ado, I would like to first give the time to Associate Professor Dr. Ibu Sukarmi. Ibu Sukarmi has earned her doctoral degree from Pajajaran University in 2005, and she was also a former commissioner of the Business Competition Supervisory Commission, or KPPU. She was the vice chairman at 2010, yes. And at the moment, Ibu Sukarmi is the head of the law department at the Faculty of Law Universitas BRAWIJAYA, and she is also a lecturer under the International Law Department. And today, she will deliver a speech about business and law after pandemic era to achieve sustainable development. To Ibu Sukarmi, I will give the time to you.
Thank you very much, Bu Nanda. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Honorable Pak Profesor Martono, Professor Gusti, Professor Rahmat, and all participants in this conference. Thank you very much in this chance. I have the first chance to speak about the business and law. I think this topic is very large and very new issues in this moment, but I just take a spirit on small issue about the relationship between economics and law. Business and economic and law, I think this is very close, the relationship. If we likes what is the money, this is law, and back is economic. We know that in this year we have a problem about the COVID or pandemic. After the past year, the world has been hit the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the disaster certainly caused of the world be hit by two concurrent crisis, that is health and the economics. The health crisis occurred because the transmission of the COVID-19 virus
variant was very fast and made many people have to undergo intensive care in hospitals. Thus, the government often implement policies that prohibit growth to prevent transmission or something like lockdown and etc. However, this policy resulted in economic crisis in the form recession until now, I think. The decline in the nation economic was none other than the slowdown in the flow of domestic and foreign trade in society. Now we talk about the how the relationship between legal and economic. Based on the many opinion about the legal and economic sciences related to the behavior of personal person or group of people. So science has the same fate with other social sciences which acts alone or in group like legal science. So this is a very important, I think, how the economic science as have collaboration with law. A science, legal science brings universal principles, but in this application occur to the situation, religious principle, and dissension and politicness. Legal science contributing to human life is a legal product that can provide protection, guarantee of the dynamics of human life as individual and community. The contribution that economic science and law united the formulation of the interest of human life. Next slide, please. I take one opinion from Professor Sachipto Raharjo. He said that the role of law and development has started at the time the decision made by the development planner are implemented. In this vice versa with the economic decision will only be an academic activity if not formulated in one or another form of law. Sorry, Pak Radit, this is the Professor Sachipto Raharjo said that the economic decision without the formulated in the form of the law, this is just an academic activity. Next, according to the Ackerman, law and economic has the power to construct a new discourse in law. So, jadi ilmu ekonomi dan hukum ini adalah dia memiliki kemampuan untuk membangun suatu wacana baru di bidang hukum. For example, we have so many economic law like competition law, banking law, and then investigation law, etc. On the other hand, according to the Kotter and Ulan, they said that interaction between law expert and economic has gone competition law regulation, or namely antitrust policy and multiple country economic regulation policies. Next slide. Now, according to the Brandeis, a lawyer has not studied economic is very apt to become a public enemy. So, lawyer, they don't learn about the economic. They said that that is the public enemy. Another side, Holmes said that, but the man of the future is the man of statistics and the master of economics. I think that is a new paradigm in economic law, because the economic law, they have approach not only in the interdiscipline, but also in multidiscipline. That is very important to the doctoral program, I think. Next slide, please. So we talk about how the impact of the pandemic, this is get impact very serious to the small medium enterprises. The pandemic has caused medium and small enterprises to be quiet due to the decline in paper processing power due to various phase that occur. One strategy how to overcome this for the medium and small enterprises is to digitize marketing through various exciting platform, for example, e-commerce. I think the positive impact for the pandemic adalah berkembangnya growth of the trading, for example, e-commerce, or we know about the digital economic. This is in the in economic impact. The current pandemic has accelerated the digitization of the economic in Indonesia. However, the synergy of the parties is still needed by both the government, which provided stimulus in the form of the capital, guarantees, controls, and others, as well as the community that must be open to the existing changes through the entrepreneurial spirit. Next slide. Nah, different from the previous economic crisis, the crisis due to the pandemic, which was heavily affected by the micro enterprises, further incentive needed on the main strength of the national economic for economic recovery in micro enterprises, tourism, and food. In addition, fiscal strengthening, I think this is important also, is also needed as a condition for how to mitigation and looser monetary policy in the form of the credit relaxation and financing to business actors in the main and micro economic sectors. How the impact to the trade? E-commerce or digital economic, with e-commerce is one of the part of the digital economic which has become a strategic to deal with the pandemic in the economic sector. Already there has regulation in trade law, namely law number 7/1914 with the term trading through electronic systems. Trading through an electronic system is trade whose transactions are related out through a series of electronic devices and procedures, and then have the relaxation of the tax to small medium enterprises. I think this impact of the trade, and then the government is trying to move the business world by providing incentive to the small medium enterprises and corporation. For medium small enterprises, the government provided, among other things, like relaxation to the KUR, ya, kredit usaha rakyat, and ultra micro, guarantees working capital to 10 billions, and tax incentives such as incoming tax, like in PPH, pajak pendapatan penghasilan, Article 21, borne by the government. For cooperation, the government provided tax incentives also, including exemption from imports, PPH Article 22, reduced installment for PPH Article 25, and the refund of VAT, placing government fund in bank to debtor restructuration. The government also provides working capital guarantees for strategic priority or labor incentive corporation. I think this is so many policies made by the government how to reduce the impact of the negative impact to the trade and economic on the small medium enterprises. How about the law enforcement? For example, Mahkamah Agung declare about the Perma number 1/2019 about the ICOT. I think ICOT is one of the impact on the pandemic, how to effectively and then to simplify to court. And the other hand, and the other side, for example, online dispute settlement on competition cases, Perkom number 1/2020, and etc. I think so many policy to the law enforcement according to the business. How the role of the law? Post-COVID-19, legal developments still refer to the basis of the state. The law was made to protect the entire nation and the entire homeland of Indonesia. In achieving the goal of the state as stated in the our constitution, it must be designed differently from the previous legal design. That's because the design was made in ancient time before there were serious problem with body. According to the Article 33, paragraph 4, state that the national economy is organized based on economic democracy with the principle of togetherness, efficiency, justice, sustainability, environmental insight, independent, and by maintaining a balance of progress and national economic unity. If we look at the Article 32, I think this is the namely according to the Professor Jimli Asidiki as economic constitution atau konstitusi ekonomi. Nah, economic constitution, this is the relationship among the state, civil society, and market as how together to build the economy's growth and with efficiency and keadilan. Constitution is chronorm. They said become the basic resources for economic policy based on the Article 33 our constitution. And if we look at the basis of democracy economic, one of about the sustainability environmental insights. So we look at how the impact of the sustainable development in after pandemic. We look at that impact of the pandemic to sustainable development. The sustainable development goal represents a global plan of action approved by world leaders intended to end poverty, reduce social equality, and protect environmental. I think this is new issues on the impact of the pandemic on the sustainable development. This SDGs consists of 17 goals and 169 targets that are scheduled to be achieved until 2030. And Indonesia began implementing them in 2015. So sustainable development is a part of democracy economic principles. And my conclusion, the relationship between law and economic is very close and cannot be separated in order to maintain sustainable development for the welfare of the people atau welfare state. How is here the provide protection for the nation and state is very important. I think that's all. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Please give a round of applause for Associate Professor Dr. Ibu Sukarmi. It was a very overriding and broad topic about how she proposes the positive economic impact about the growth of the trading of economic and fiscal strengthening. And you also passed about the law enforcement impact. Later on, maybe there will be some feedbacks and questions about the e-court. We would like to hear that more in online dispute settlement. But first, let's give the second speaker his turn to present the paper, which is Bapak Radityo Putro Handrito, PhD, from the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas BRAWIJAYA. And Pak Radityo earned his doctoral program in business economics at the University of Ghent, Belgium, in 2021. At the moment, he is the secretary of the management department at the Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas BRAWIJAYA. He is also a postdoctoral fellow at the Department of Marketing, Innovation and Organization at the Faculty of Economic and Business, Ghent, University of Belgium. And today he will give a presentation about stuck in short-term daily operations or not, unraveling an SME's long-term orientation. To Bapak Radityo, please, we give the time to you.
Okay, thank you to Nanda for the time, and then thank you for all of the chairperson, women in this event. I'm gratefully to thank to all of you for attending this beautiful meeting, even though we are just after the pandemic, but however, our spirit and struggle to be keep claiming to overcome the others' problem. Okay, thank you that giving me the opportunity to share my research. Actually, at the first moment, I was asked by Dr. Ananda Sabil that I will have to deliver some topics that relates to law and business during after the pandemics. I was confused what kind of topic that will be suitable to deliver, especially to add several values to the academia in Indonesia and also in this beautiful event. And then I come up with the decision that I would like to share my current research on a paper that currently is still on the second round for the revision after got rejected in several papers. But I think it's time for me to share this the findings, which is coincidentally in line with Ibu Sukarmi just shared with us. It is also about small and medium enterprises and relates to the regulation, how the regulation will take an important role in promoting the long-term orientation. So this is the title that we choose as the authors, stuck in short-term daily operation or not. We are trying to unraveling the SME's long-term orientation. So I would like to first introduce the background of this study, so all of us will be understood that this is the common phenomena that we, especially small medium enterprises, facing nowadays and also in the future, and then how we are going to explore what happened, and then also try to give any solution relates to this phenomena. So please move to next slide. Okay, first I would like to introduce one concept that mostly and well known in management field, especially an entrepreneur. We are seeking for long-term orientation. Long-term orientation defined as the ability, the decision making of choosing whether we are going to be long-term oriented person or we are short-term oriented person. This is not just rely about what we want in the future, what we want in the short term tomorrow or next year or 10 years, but it's related on the perspective, our orientation. Why? Because a long-term oriented person will be likely to be more innovative, because they are not going just thinking about what to be eaten tomorrow, but also what should be grow in the next 10 years or even 100 years. So this is very important concept. Long-term orientation also refers to one of cultural dimension promoted by Geert Hofstede, long-term oriented. So mostly country with long-term orientation will be likely become the developed country is instead of the developing countries. So the long-term orientation particularly very important on this matter. In institutional like government, business, or even in our individual daily life. But in our study, we are going to put this long-term orientation in the context of small medium enterprises. All of us already understand that small medium enterprises dominates the all of business sector. Many statisticians, many Bureau of Statistics and the governmental agency released that more than 90% of business hold in every countries are dominated by small medium enterprises. So this is very important to understand small medium enterprises. However, the recent studies, almost on the majority of studies, mostly just focusing on the contextual and external factor. The result is always we formulate a policy just based on what happened seen outside, but we never know what happened inside. we got stimulus, we got every policy relates to stimulate, for example, small internationalization. We give them any workshop for digital literacy, financial literacy, and also the long-term orientation itself, but it doesn't work, especially in developing countries. This is sad, this is pity, this is so paradox, because we already spent a lot of money, a lot of funds just to formulate such policy, but we do not solve the real problem. So we are not trying to judge that the current policy or current activity is useless, but we would like to give another perspective to support these things. So small medium enterprises, mostly we already know that most of small medium enterprises in our country, for example, they are just stuck in daily activities. What should be produced tomorrow? How much money we have to earn next week? How we got loan from the bank tomorrow? But no one of them, or very little amount of them, thinking about what will be in the next 10 years. Are we going still to be small medium enterprises or become big enterprises? So this is very important to enhance, to lift up the class of small medium enterprises. And then we went through several research setting. Next slide, please. Mostly, if we are deep down into long-term orientation fields, they are mostly discussed about the external pressure. For example, regulation. The policy, yes, it ensure that the future will be bright. But however, more than 75 years, the small medium enterprises in Indonesia is still what we see today. And also the organization, a lot of activities, workshop that conducted by the ministry, by department in Indonesia, giving knowledge, giving any new insights, literacy, digital or financial things, but it also doesn't work. The several research also already work on the individual things, giving motivational lecturer, giving some religious recharge, let's say, but it also doesn't work. But however, in the field of psychology, there is a field that not many of us even conscious about it. So this is a big question. What if the deep down inside our heart, inside your heart, inside the heart, inside the psychology, inside the self of our entrepreneur, it should be taken care of instead of the external things. So this research mostly talking about how the effect of psychological aspect of the entrepreneur toward his or her SME's behavior. In this case, long-term orientation. So what is the internal side of individual? Next slide. Next, please. Now, however, we fully understand, like Bu Sukarmi just said, that it is impossible for a business, for a countries, for organization that we would like to solve. Like also Prof. Kus just told us that we cannot be alone to solve any problems. We have to be work together. So this conference actually representing that business and law should be work together. Otherwise, we just useless to do that. Because we know that the individual cannot work optimally without any surrounding institution. In Indonesia, we call it as lembaga. Institutionalists believe that there are three pillars that funding the institution. Namely, first, the regulation. Of course, this is what we have in law faculties. In law faculties, the academia say that the regulation is important because it's ensure the stability and also the obedience of people, of the society, of course. But apart from the law itself, there are other two specific aspects that mostly known, but mostly avoided. For example, normative institution. The norm within our society, whether we are conscious or not, whether we like or not, will shape our behavior. No. And then the last one is the cognitive, the education, the knowledge possessed by individual, so that they will behave differently. This is also empirically proven by the role of university. A lot of students, all of you pursuing doctoral degree here, is also part of your journey to acquire the cognitive things, so that you will behave differently before you got the doctoral degree and you after got the doctoral degree. So there must be a change. If not, yeah, there should be a problem during your doctoral degree. So this is the institutional belief. We bring these issues to also understand why some small medium enterprises would like to be also long-term oriented, and then while the others are not. We cannot deny that several small medium enterprises become comfort just thinking about what should be eat today, what should be done tomorrow, next week, without further thinking what happened in the next 10 years. This is because we are comfort worried, but also because the surrounding institution, the norm, regulation, and also cognitive hinders them to thinking further. For example, a lot of subsidy, too much subsidy also not good. It should be just stimulates in the first hand and then let them to be flourish in the next 10 or 100 years. So this is very also important. And then bringing them together, supporting institutional and small medium enterprises behavior, we try to understand how if the psychological aspect interact with institutional aspects. And then I would like to discuss the context of this study for the next slide, please. We explore SMEs owners in East Java using lizard and snowball, and then because of kind of experimental measurement on the psychological aspect, so it's not just fully questionnaire things. We collected 176 small medium enterprises owner. It's kind of interview section during 2.5 hours. And then we would like to prove, next slide. There are 4 hypotheses that we would like to know. For example, need for achievement. I would like to introduce you with these new topics. Need for achievement is a concept, psychological concept that rooted in our daily activities, rooted inside ourselves, whether we are conscious or not. It is brought by David McClellan back in 1961. So basically, human, you, me, all of us are driven into based on 3 basic needs: need for achievement, need for affiliation, and need for power. I'm not going to tell about the need for power of affiliation because the limitation of time, but need for achievement is mostly well known as the driver why people be more likely to be an entrepreneur. So we argue that small medium enterprises owner should be high in need for achievement because they would like to achieve something. They would like to prove something. They would like to master something. They would like to have a challenging situation so that they become entrepreneur. If do so, then long-term orientation is also something, a concept that requires several aspects about the challenge. What about the future? So if small medium enterprises owner having high level of need for achievement, they would like to have more long-oriented small medium enterprises. And then the results say, yes, it is. So the theory say so. So what happened? Yes, so be it. But the interesting topic is what happened if we interact the need for achievement with the other three dimensions of institution. Similar to our hypothesis, of course, law, regulation, positively interact and giving positive effect on long-term orientation. Of course, because this is meant to be. So I'm not going to talk about the regulation because the other speakers will be more expert on that and then just explain to us why the regulation is important. No question. But however, the insignificant results here is also interesting about the normal and also the cognitive things. We just believe or we kind of deny that our cognitive or normative also support the entrepreneurial behavior. Yes, but however, the findings say differently. The results say that there is no effect, interaction effect, or even the direct effect between the norm in Indonesia, or at least in East Java, about the entrepreneurial things, and also the cognitive aspect in East Java to support entrepreneurial activities. This is the answer from the small medium enterprises owners. So this is a pity. This finding is kind of wake up call for us that we cannot just be like this, but we have to think about how we create not only well-educated entrepreneur, but also the policymaker have to make sure that we have to create cognitive aspect. We have to shape the cognitive aspect as well as the norm. And then, is that the responsibility of the government? Of course not. Government already taking care about the regulation, but however, the norm, who should responsible for this? Of course, you, me, and all of us here, because we have to create supporting institution. We have to creating an ecosystem which stimulate the long-term and entrepreneurial activities. If, for example, sorry if this kind of, but no hard feeling, we have to back to 30 or 40 years ago. For example, if you would like to propose a girl to his father, to his parent, they always ask you, but what is your job? If you are not the civil servant, for example, sorry, because majority of all of us, there's more likely we are got rejected. Why? Because it's not. I have to pick a wise word, otherwise I will be got issued. But it's not promising things. Just finding it. It's not promising. For example, if you are saying that I am entrepreneur, so most likely you are got rejected. That's done by one's parent, but it's also done by most parents in Indonesia at that moment. So because of the respondent we interview in this study mostly grow up in that environment, so they just believe that the norm in their society do not support the entrepreneurial activity, so that's why they do not want to be entrepreneur. Or even, for example, the explanation. No, the next one. The findings show that the becoming entrepreneur in Indonesia back 20 or 30 years ago is often the result of the imperfect formal workforce, because I'm not accepted as civil servant, because I'm not accepted as state-owned company. Then there is no choice for us. I have to work in market. I have to create some things, whether you like or not. But once you got the opportunity to be accepted as civil servant, for example, you will be left behind what's the business that you guys started. Whether you like or not, this is the fact of doing that. So that if they believe that the norm do not support and also the cognitive things do not support, this is also in line with the finding that Indonesia in 20 or 30 years ago in primary education, there is no education about entrepreneurship. The education of entrepreneurship maybe just introduced in the early 2000. So that after 2022, for example, we see a lot of young entrepreneur. Because why? Because since the beginning of their life, they already exposed with the entrepreneurial cognitive and knowledge. So it's not surprisingly. But however, the results show. So what is the further thought that we can find, that we can take notes to home? It means, again, the individual also important. But the government already did a good job based on this research. But the big homework lies in all of us. How we can provide supporting norm for entrepreneurial activities after the pandemic. How we can provide a good knowledge access so that somewhere in Papua, somewhere in Sumatra, or even in Jakarta can easily access knowledge about entrepreneurship. Together, business, law, or even psychology, or medicine, for example, all of us in the university have to work together. So I think this is complementary also for Universitas BRAWIJAYA as entrepreneurial university. The entrepreneurship not only taken by the Faculty of Economics, but also taught not in other faculties. So we are in a good track now. So maybe if we are not yet seeing the result in this just 20 years, so maybe next 30 years, there will be a better future. So that's all from me that I can share. I hope you enjoy and then get something from the things that I just shared. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bapak Radityo, for that insightful. It's great that he talked about not only regulations that has been passed by Ibu Associate Professor Dr. Sukarmi, but then there are other external, or he says internal factors about the normative aspects, the cognitive aspects, and later we might want to talk about how to maintain this type of system, particularly in Indonesia. Thank you for that insight. So hold your questions and feedbacks, ladies and gentlemen. We will have time later for discussion. But now I would like to give the floor to our third speaker, which is Ibu Dery Tanti Wijaya, PhD, who is here with us virtually through Zoom.
Hello.
Hello, Ibu Dery. It is very nice to see you here today. And before she begins, I would like to introduce her. Ibu Dery has earned her Bachelor and Masters of Science from the National University of Singapore and a doctorate degree from Carnegie Mellon University at the United States of America in 2016. She is a postdoctoral researcher at Computer and Information Science at the University of Pennsylvania, USA. And currently, she is an assistant professor at Boston University, and she has interest in natural language processing, including information extraction and also knowledge bases. And today she will share with us an interesting topic about artificial intelligence in a post-pandemic world. So to Ibu Dery, I would like to give the time and screen to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm going to share my screen for the presentation. So today I'm going to talk about a topic that is related to the conference topic, which is business and law after pandemic. So from my perspective, which is my research, which focuses on artificial intelligence. So here I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and how it touches all aspects of our lives, including businesses and law in a post-pandemic world. So just to share a little bit about my research focus and why I'm interested to talk about this topic is because my teaching and research has been mainly focused on artificial intelligence. particularly on natural language processing and machine learning, which is how we can make computers that can process and understand human languages the way we do. My two focus for research is machine translation for low resource languages, where we want to build systems, computer systems that can translate languages automatically, especially for languages that have few training data. So if you are already familiar, for example, with Google Translate or Bing Translate, these translation systems are typically only available for high resource languages, languages that have a lot of training data, maybe about hundreds or so of languages, but there are in the world 7,000 other languages that do not yet have translation system. So that's where my focus is. And my second focus is more on the application side of AI, on how we can detect basically the frame of news stories. So for example, the way the same topic, say immigration or COVID, the way these topics are covered in news articles might be different depending on who is writing the article. So for example, for COVID, there are some news articles that can cover from the health side, and there are some that can cover from the economy side, like how it's affecting economy and so on. There are articles that cover from the education side, so there are many frames in which you can discuss the same topic. And my research is in how we can detect this different point of view in news articles automatically, so that we can understand how the media is used to and how they can influence the opinion of the public. So these are my two research focus, and that's why I'm very interested in talking about AI, especially post-pandemic, because this is basically what I have been researching and teaching about. So before we start with AI, I guess I want to introduce first the different industrial revolution, because AI became a hot topic after we started talking about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? So actually, this revolution has started from different types of industrial revolution, starting from the first revolution, where we transition from the way we do things using hands through doing things using machines. And then the second revolution, where we start building railroads and telegraph networks and have electricity. So it changes the way we do things. And then the third revolution is when we started to use a computer, and we start to automate some stuff. And then in the fourth industrial revolution, we are trending towards making more of this automation available, and not just for the industry or the manufacturing, but also in all parts of our lives. So I'm going to talk more about that. And the driving force of this industry 4.0 is what you call the big data revolution, right? So nowadays we have, because especially during the pandemic, for 2 years, we are doing a lot of our activities online, right? We have Zoom meetings, we buy things online, we surf things, we look for things online. So everything has turned to moving from offline to online because of the pandemic. And this generates a lot of data. So the data is the one that we can use then to train systems so that they can, do things the way we do things by intuitively imitating the way we do things. And this data, this digital data, is made available because we now have internet that goes everywhere around the world, even in the remote of places. and we also have the need, right? So now we need things to be available to us quickly, like if you buy things in online in the internet, like in Tokopedia or in Shopee, right? You want the product to be sent, to be shipped that day. You ask the vendor, can you send it by today? Is this product available? Can you send it by today? And so there is a driving force in the way we, as a customers, need things to be automated. And then at the end of the days, because we want it to be automated, we want to make machines, computer systems that can make this kind of decision, like checking whether the inventory has the product that we need and whether the shipping company can send it, all these things can be automated without using human intervention, so we can make it as fast as possible. So this is the technology, the artificial intelligence that basically drives the industry 4.0. And there are many other applications aside from the things that I've talked about, like the shipping and shopping and education, for example. There are other like more famous ones, like the self-driving car, self-driving drones, and so on and so forth, that basically can drive on its own, like being automated. Nobody is driving it. Warehouse robots that have been deployed, for example, in many warehouses. So for example, in the US, if you buy things online, for example, in Amazon, there is no longer somebody in the warehouse that takes stuff for you. Maybe in some cases there are still people who do that, but mostly robots are the one who took your order and then package it and then send it. So that's why it has become like very fast. You can get next day services, or even same day services for some of this order. And then you probably also have interacted with chatbots, right? When you are doing your banking and things like that. For example, Sabrina is the type of chatbots that are, you can talk to when you want to ask about the nearest ATM, for example, and things like that. These are not powered anymore by human. So they are all basically machines that can reply to your questions. And then there's product recommendations. So for example, if you are watching things in Netflix, there are, recommendation for you of what to watch next. And that is based on what you have watched before and what other people who have watched the same things as you have watched. So like, and also like in GoFood and things like that. So these are like product recommendation that can recommend you what to buy next based on what others that have similar profile, similar shopping profile, similar watching profile as you have, as you have done. So as you can imagine, all of this automation is powered by artificial intelligence, which is the backbone of Industry 4.0. But inside AI, there are many branches, including my focus, which is natural language processing, which focuses more on the processing human languages. But all of these are powered by machine learning, which is how we can build computer systems that can learn from the data. And recently we have deep learning as well. And these are all used in different areas of AI, including languages, vision, which processes images, human-computer interaction that learns how best to make a system that can interact the best with human in the most natural way. And then robotics that learn how to create robots that can move the way we move, basically like humans. So what is machine learning that underlies all of these AI systems? So machine learning is a field of study that has the goal to make computer systems that learn from data. So in the traditional computer science paradigm, you might probably have seen this a lot, like computer science is very close related to programming. When you think of computer scientist, you think of programmer, right? Where typically last time we would have data, and then we would program some rules on how to process this data in order to produce output. But with machine learning, the programming is no longer we inputting the rules to process data. So what we give to the machine learning systems that we program is we give them example data and example labels that we want assigned to that data. So for example, if you are trying to create a computer system that can predict the price of houses in the market, you would take the existing houses that are available in the market and their prices. So that will be your data. So the houses would be your data. So it consists of information about the house, like when is it built, where is it located, how many rooms it has, and all the other stuff. What's the square meter areas occupied by the house, and so on and so forth. And then you have the labels, which is the price of the house, the selling price of the house. And then you feed this into a machine learning system that will learn the patterns on how to map this information about the house from like how many rooms it has, the location, and so on and so forth, to the price. So once you train this machine learning system and it understands the pattern, you can input it new data, which doesn't have pricing, and it will use the patterns to predict the price of the house. Right. So no longer we ourselves program the rules. The rules are learned basically from the input data and labels that we give the machine. And machine learning is what underlies most current AI models. And it is a software or algorithm that learns to make decisions from examples. And examples, as we've seen before with the houses, are data that has been collected and annotated with labels such as price and so on. So during training, basically, we would train our model. For example, in this example here, we have a sentiment analysis data where there is review and there is a label of what the review indicates, whether it's a positive, neutral, or negative sentiment. So if somebody say the product is okay, I guess it's neutral. But if somebody say my experience so far has been fantastic, it's positive sentiment. And then we train the model given an input like we are happy with the service to produce the label positive. And if it makes a mistake and predict negative, we are going to correct the algorithm so that it learns, when you have words like happy, it maps to more likely map to the positive sentiment instead of the negative. So by doing this training, once the model is good enough, like on our development data, for example, we are going to use it and we are going to apply it to the test. So during tests, we have inputs that do not have labels. So for example, I have bad experience with customer support, and our model, because it has learned patterns, for example, like bad, useless, to be correlated with negative label, it will predict negative for this particular review. And the most popular current machine learning algorithm is neural network. And it does the same thing. It learns patterns from examples, but the algorithm itself is based on neural network. So the neural network basically is built to imitate the way our brain works. So when we have input to the brain, some parts of our brain lights up. Same thing with the neural network. It consists of what we call neurons. And when we input, for example, a review, a piece of string, it converted to features that lights up some of the neurons, and that finally results in the label. So basically each neuron receives input from previous layer neurons, and then also pass its output to the next layer. And a neuron can be activated, it can be like light up, or it can be not light up, and all these things. Sorry, let me close that. Yeah, so it can finally light up the correct label. So for example, in this case, negative. So these machine learning algorithms and systems are used basically to create a lot of the systems that we are using today. For example, in your camera, when you take picture of people, it can directly put a square around people's faces. So these are face detection. So these are machine learning systems as well that have been deployed in phones so that they can detect faces better, and then do labeling. So for example, it can label whose face is this, and so on and so forth. Movie recommendation, like I mentioned, in Netflix, advertisements that you see in Facebook. So based on what posts you click in Facebook, and what things you have searched in the same browser as the one you used to open your Facebook, these are used to pick the best advertisement to show to you. And then chatbots, like Veronica in Telkomsel or Sabrina in BRI, these are all also machine learning systems. So machine learning is what powers a lot of AI systems, but AI itself is a larger concept that basically deal with how we can build machines that can do human tasks in the ways that we think of as intelligent. So there could be many areas where these AI systems are built. For example, in robotics, you build AI systems that can move the way humans do. In vision, you build computer systems that can see things, recognize things the way humans do. And in NLP, you have AI systems that can read or listen or talk the way humans do. And these are all parts of AI, and then they are powered basically by machine learning and nowadays deep learning. Like deep learning is this neural network. Just now we call it deep because it has layers of neurons as deep as you can make it, like as deep as your computer systems can take. So back to the pandemic, right? So like I mentioned just now, the pandemic has created a shift in the way we do things. So nowadays we do a lot of things online, remote, and we generate a lot of this digital data, or footprint, we call it. And because of all this data that is available to train the AI systems, AI has enabled this deployment of systems that can do a lot of healthcare and other purposes, like it can be used to, for example, monitor the rise of cases and predict, when to start the lockdown, for example. Hopefully no more lockdown. And then also, like during supply chain disruption during this pandemic, AI has been also used to re-engineer production delivery so that it can help with the supply chain problem. And then AI has also been used to support a lot of activities that we do during the pandemic, like education, shopping, government services, so like Peduli Lindungi and stuff like that, and at work as well, Zoom. So Zoom has been also using AI, for example, to help with who is talking, and then making sure that the connection is better when someone is recognized as talking, and you can see like the camera that is being highlighted moves, right, from different person when that person is talking. So like these are some types of AI systems that we don't realize is there already, and we are already using it as we speak. But there is always this fear, right, with AI, that because a lot of things are now being automated, does that mean we are going to be losing, a lot of people are going to be losing a lot of jobs, right? However, the occupations that are mostly affected by COVID-19 are in the service sector. So like hotel, restaurants, and so on and so forth. And these are occupations that require skills that are not easily replaced by AI. So the fear that COVID causes AI automation and therefore loss of jobs have not actually been realized, because a lot of the service industries that are affected are the things that, robots cannot yet do, like, even doing things like carrying your bags to your rooms, for example, right? Or greeting or opening the door. These are things that robots still find hard to do. And beside that, like, even the firm's decisions to automate depends on a combination of factors. For example, it costs a lot to adopt AI to begin with, but maybe it will help in the long run in terms of cost. But they also need, the skill and labor to do this AI system or to maintain this AI system. So therefore, not many firms have decided to automate just because, there is a pandemic. And in fact, AI could actually help create better quality jobs, because the things that AI systems are good at are the things that are monotonous, things that are, doing the same thing over and over and over again. These can be replaced by AI systems. So it gives us more time to do other things that require, creativity, leadership, interpersonal skills, and so on and so forth. So it could actually help us to live our lives better. And we see, in fact, that AI actually have grown a lot during the pandemic. So the tech sectors, for example, in the US, has continued to rapidly grow. In the US itself, the growth of the tech sectors is triple the growth of the economy as a whole. And these are propelled by explosion of remote work. So a lot of tech works can be done remotely, so they don't really get affected by the lockdown and stuff like that. Also, a lot of people started to do things online, which creates all of this e-commerce and digitalization that benefited the tech sectors. And in fact, in 2020, the 5 tech companies, superpowers, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, had combined revenue of more than US $1.2 trillion because of this home shopping, this a lot of companies who have stopped, marketing elsewhere start to market in the internet when they have money to do marketing, because that's where the people are. And then software, they cut costs also, so they become slimmer and leaner, and therefore have more income, right? More revenue. And then they also have been spending on areas that extend their advantage. For example, Amazon spent $50 billion in 2020 to purchase warehouses and cloud computing hubs so that they can provide services for more companies to go online. Just to put this in context, it's more than double what ExxonMobil spent digging oil and gas from the ground each year. So the tech has overtaken like the spending of oil and gas companies. And the pandemic and digital adaptation, it forced also help smaller businesses that adapt to web sales and delivery. So for example, if you go to Tamrin City now, right, a lot of the vendors there have already accounts in Shopee. So you can actually buy their products in Shopee instead of going to Tamrin City. So in terms of tech sector, there are many business models, but all of them deal with basically buying and selling data or create a service that are built on data. And because of this data, a lot of things have changed. Everything can be datafied. For example, even the way you sit on your chair, if I put sensors on your chair, I can already datify the way you sit. And therefore, I can recognize who is sitting where. And one of the implications of this, you can build actually a system in cars that can detect if the driver is the correct driver or not, you know, to stop someone from stealing cars, or even like detecting when the drivers start to slump and maybe need to be waken up. So all these things result from this ability to turn everything into data. And when we talk about data, then we cannot help talking about data science and the ability to take data, to be able to understand it, to process it, to extract value from it, to visualize it, and to communicate it. This is going to be like the hugely important skill in the next decade. So I think I don't have much time to talk about it, but I just want to highlight also that the impact, I guess, of this data on other fields beside, you know, industry is also in the way we do research. So especially, for example, in economy and business, you know, there are many things you can do with data. For example, predicting stock price change based on news about the companies, predicting the economic index of countries based on what the media is writing about them. And in accounting, also, you can automatically create balance sheets from financial reports. And there are many things basically that you can do with AI and data. So that's, I think, since I don't have any more time, I'm going to end here. But yeah, if you have question, you can ask later. I wanted to highlight about what regulations were needed to regulate all this data, because now we have, remember the last few weeks, we have these BRCA data leaks, right? So we need the regulation in place, not only in terms of law, but also implementation of this law in order to protect the data that we have, that every one of us has generated online. So in fact, like by 2030 or something, each one of us is predicted to have generated about 2.5 terabytes of data. And these are all digitized. So the thing about privacy is that, you know, you don't want anyone else to know more about you than yourself. But with the data we have generated every day, it's very hard to escape this. So that's all I want to say. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Ibu Dery, for a wonderful presentation about the AI and data and how it impacts the post-pandemic era throughout the world. And you have highlighted very briefly about how this impact not only about the economic, but also the psychological aspects, about the educational aspect, the psychological aspects. And I think those are some things that we can discuss later. And you also strengthened about how AI and data had helped smaller enterprises and business to adapt to a more of a web sale perspective in this digital era. Thank you. Thank you for that. And last but not least, we have come to the fourth speaker of today's seminar, which is Professor Hasan Kakaya. Good morning, Professor Kakaya. So Professor Kakaya was the head of the United Nations Program on Competition and Consumer Policies at the United Nations Conference in Trade and Development in Geneva, Switzerland, which he is currently now today. And since 2015, Professor Hassan Kakaya has been attached to the Melbourne Law School, University of Melbourne, Australia, who is now a senior fellow where he teaches international trade and competition policy. Currently, he is also a special advisor to the Brunei Ministry of Finance and the Brunei Competition Commission. And so he specializes in competition and consumer policy, financial regulation, and international trade and anti-dumping. And today he will give a presentation about addressing the post-COVID-19 and the current crisis, business and law in ASEAN. I will give the time and screen to you, Professor Kakaya.
Good morning to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, let me thank the University of BRAWIJAYA for organizing this timely conference to address a very topical and important dimension, both in terms of policy and development issues, but at the same time, as well as the academic aspects which this issue raises. Maybe we can share the presentation. I would highlight that my presentation will focus on the following dimensions. The first thing is to discuss the relationship between business and law, both from a theoretical perspective or analytical framework, and also the implication for policy issues. Then I will address how the post-COVID crisis and the current also economic crisis has affected developing countries, in particular the ASEAN economies, and what kind of policies could be useful. And thirdly, we see how the different role of business themselves, business models and government public policies can contribute to addressing recovery, and whether the existing analytical frameworks that we have in law and business can be helpful in providing policy implications. Next, please. The first thing, since the main theme of this topic addresses business law in a post-crisis situation, the first thing I think to emphasize and highlight is that both economic and financial crises are manifestation of markets themselves. And these crises are usually the causes either of regular business cycles or poor or inadequate regulations, or they can be of external shocks such as the pandemic COVID, which affected the world. The crises, of course, have serious adverse effects. And some of these effects are both economic, social, political, and societals. So the dimensions are multi-faceted, and therefore the policies themselves that we need to address them will have to also be multifaceted. Now, the solutions would require to address these crises themselves will require combinations of actions by the business community themselves, by public policies, and regulation or laws as such. The role of each of these actors and measures clearly will depend on the specific circumstances of countries, sectors, and the stakeholders which are affected. Now, to understand, therefore, and formulate the appropriate policy measures, the laws, as well as business plans, we would require to have a solid understanding of how law and economics, data collations, and gain insight, understandings of the effectiveness of both the regulations and the law that we need to develop to remedy those problems, as well as the kind of policies if they are going to affect either public interventions or the business community. Now, at the moment, and I think historically, there has been a solid academic body of both legal and economic theories that can provide the foundations both of law and economics. However, neoclassical economics and law, and the traditional approach to all law, had tended to study both business and laws in silos. What is required, in my view, is that we need an approach, an analytical approach that focuses on economic law. In other words, a multidisciplinary approach that combines both the study of economics and law and not separately. And I think we heard from the previous speakers both about the understanding of how various business models, how the development of private sector in Indonesia, for example, is motivated, understanding the character, the psychological of the entrepreneur can be extremely helpful. We also understood how technology and new transformation can lead to a better understanding. It's only when we develop good understanding based on solid data and models that we can formulate both appropriate and effective laws and allow businesses to develop. And this is, as I said, there is a solid body of academic work that exists already in this area. Next, please. Now, if we look at specifically the post-COVID, we see that the crisis itself has exposed pre-existing challenges in Southeast Asia. And it's one of the regions that was hardly hit by the crisis and is threatening the development gains. Now, what is even more worrying is that a prolonged economic downturn with the recessions will have serious implications for all countries, including Indonesia and other countries, and threaten the prosperities and the gains that have been gained over the last 20 years, and it might undermine economic growth and stability in the whole regions. Just to quote the OECD, which have carried out some estimates, it says that the impact of the pandemic, for example, was the third greatest economic, financial, and social crisis in the 21st century after 9/11 and the global financial crisis of 28, which brought a halt to production in countries, hitting supply chains in the world. And I quote that in the report of cities' responses to tackle it. Furthermore, the post-COVID crisis has also compounded the shift in distribution of power in the world and have sharpened strategic competition among the big players. So it's not only that there has been a hit in the economy, but also the shift in powers at the global level for more competitions. It has also put pressure on the rules and the laws, norms and institutions that has fostered open and prosperous opportunity for ASEAN countries, including Indonesia, and this waiting has been more acute. Now, it also has implications. We know, for example, that negotiation at WTO and on World Trading System are at standstills. The WTO is on life support, and proliferation of large number of bilateral and smaller trading agreements are emergence. And of course, those have posed a threat to both international peace and security. Next, please. The impact on specifically on Asia, as I said, is very harsh and expected to be worse than the 1997 ASEAN. That's according to the IMF and OECD work. It also meant that for many countries, the disruption in global supply chains, and many countries which rely on, for example, on workers' remittance, have seen those sources of income that support family and small business dry out altogether. Other countries which rely on sectors such as tourism, including Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, etc., have seen serious cut in the number of revenues and service activities that are brought down to standstills. And of course, those exposed the vulnerability of the most of groups that have already been marginalized. And this clearly was compounded by the health and the concern for future development immediately. Thanks. Next, please. Now, it's important to highlight that this crisis came out, and we need to keep in mind the context in which COVID came in. It came already at a time where there has been a serious criticism of certain law and regulation that have been monitoring the markets. Remember, my starting point was that the crisis itself is a manifestation of markets. And one area that has been subject to this criticism in antitrust or competition law. We have seen over the last almost 8 years a debate that has been criticizing and questioning whether the approach to competition policy or antitrust, that is the way business is regulated, which focus only on consumer standards and also on merger control, whether this was accurate and sufficient. A question was raised as whether those policies were effective, or whether the approach to antitrust and the way competition policy in the market was actually skewed, favoring large companies, larger concentration at the expense of consumers and SMEs, and also as a large class of populations. And this is the background. So we already knew before COVID crisis that there have been certain questions whether the approach and reliance on market economy embodied in the approach to antitrust was the appropriate approach, or whether we needed some more broader approach and more comprehensive that will produce inclusive growth and benefit to all society. Now, whatever happened, I think we should keep in mind as we look forward for the recovery, that the current post-COVID and the economic crisis will pass. However it lasts, it will pass on. And we know also that despite some questioning about the role of government interventions, we know right now that the stimulus packages that has been put in by many governments in the places have been instrumental in reversing the process and establishing market stability. So the appropriate approach that we would need to look, and I would favor in this discussion, is to find some compromise between what would be appropriate laws and regulations that yield inclusive results, and giving a role both to government and to public sector policies, rather than emphasizing the tension or incompatibility between so-called industrial policy and a role of markets and competition. Next, please. Now, of course, we need to understand what was the response for let's say, the ASEAN countries, because we cannot look at the whole world, but since our discussion is focused on Indonesia, the reason we can put it in the regional context. In spite and in addition, and I think we need to go a little bit deeper there, that the pandemic crisis is a major concern. But there are other aggravating factors that affect and have implications for Indonesia and some other ASEAN countries. And those are two things. One is the global recession in the world economy. We know now that interest rate has been rising very sharply. We know that there have been oil prices have been increasing very fast, which are affecting inflation and supply of foods, etc. So this recession in the global economy, which is the worst in the Great Depression, will have a compounding effect on the opportunities for the recovery for Indonesia and ASEAN countries. That's the first factor. The second thing that we should also remember, and I quote the IMF there, is that China, which has been a locomotive for generating growth in global value chains, in its trade also with Indonesia and ASEAN countries, is also going through a recession itself. And it is unlikely, according to all forecasts, that China itself is likely to pull out of this or to generate the stimulus packages that it had in the past to help countries. Now, these two factors clearly are aggravating condition that we need to keep in mind when we discuss the road to recovery in the post-COVID crisis. Next, please. Now, I think previous, I think you skipped one more. Yeah, I think the response of the ASEAN countries to the post-crisis, and this has been done. I mean, it's not like when we talk about what is likely to come, it's not like ASEAN and Indonesia did not do anything. There have been a number of interventions that have been done for them. And I just quote some of these that are listed in style effect, and they include government interventions. For example, the provision of cash and credit injection into the banking sector to maintain liquidity for commercial bank transaction, the setting up of national stockpiles of essential commodities and health products, including temporary access on export of commodities, basics such as rice, and joint facilities, production and exchange of information. Now, here in this second intervention, under antitrust and the way markets are being incorporated, some of these activity would be considered to constitute a collusion or anti-competitive agreement that since it allows cooperation by business. But there have been exceptions in the introduction and in implication of competition law in order to facilitate and to alleviate the shortages and the crisis that most countries are facing. The third element is acquiring competition and enforcement agencies which regulate markets to play a flexible approach in the enforcement of competition policy, including temporary suspending of certain activities for exemption as such. Last but not least is the state bailing out of some firms where the enterprises are failing. Next, please. On the regional level, that is ASEAN countries as a group also organized a coordinated response under the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plan. And it focused on the most critical sector so that a coordinated approach among all the 10 countries is put in place in order to avoid better than neighbor policies. In other words, that certain policies which might have positive impact in one country domestically might actually have negative impact on the others. The idea is to ensure that this coordination of policy will allow all countries to achieve common objectives. And this consisted of 5 strategies. The first is enhancing health system, which is critical in this period now and in the future. The second thing is strengthening human security, which is another major pillar of the sector. Third is maximizing the potential intra-ASEAN market and broader economic integrations. Fourth, accelerating the inclusive digital transformation. And we just heard from Dari's presentation how important this sector is and how fast it's transforming the economy. And fifth, advancing toward a more sustainable and resilient future as such. Now, as you can see, all these strategies have both a legal and a business dimensions. Legal in the sense they require certain regulations and certain new law that need to put in place. And they require also business in the sense that we need to create a business environment. We need to understand how the business environment can work effectively, and what are those models that that lead to most efficient allocation of resources that can generate wealth and prosperity. And having these 2 dimensions, as I said earlier, would require a better understanding of each in order to create a favorable environment. Next, please. This comprehensive recovery framework, of course, require a number of other issues which are cross-cutting. And these cross-cutting issues include policy responses and finance, mobilization of resources. It also requires institutions and governance mechanisms. Institution, for example, for giving bigger role to women in the business community, local communities in decision-making, governance in respecting and protecting human rights of groups, environmental issues, engagement of all stakeholders and partnerships, and having a system of economic monitoring. Now, of course, all of this will shape the form of recovery. And sustainable recovery will not only require overcoming the crisis, because the crisis will go, will have to pass. But what ASEAN is aiming, and I think this is what the focus should continue to be, is in allowing and for example, Indonesia, since this is our talk today, how to build a resilient future. And this is what matters, because crises are, as I said right at the beginning, they are a manifestation of capitalism, of market economy. They are a current regular aspect of the sky. So there will be more crises, there will be more activity, but the focus should be on creating a resilient future, a site, and that require solutions, change of mindset to continue this progress. Next, please. Now, from specifically for that's the public policy that I mentioned. Now, if we turn around and we look at how markets will need to be regulated and how the business actually could operate, we realize that the existing regulations of markets, which is done through antitrust and competition law and the enforcement agencies, we see that they are facing challenges during this crisis. And some of these challenges here, they are not comprehensive. They are just in some of the ones that are emerged. The first thing is the increased pressure on government to relax merger control and the standard of informations. There is this pressure here in order to address with the emergency situation that most, both the post-COVID and the current inflationary environment we're living in. Second point is state-backed or those mergers which are encouraged or instigated by state are being used with stimulus packages with wider government policies. And this raises the question as to what will be the consequences. Are we moving towards a bigger role for the states, a bigger role for business and requirement? Are we creating monopolies? Are we reducing state-owned enterprises? Those are issues that at the moment facing competition authorities, and regulations is somehow being unable to address them effectively. Third point is that we just saw from the transformation of digital economy, IAs, the big data and all that, also creating a complexity of issues in order to understand and analyze merger review to abuse of dominance situation that arises. All of these require now more technical counterfactual analysis that require both economic and legal understanding. And the models that we have and might need to be revised. That is, economic models that we have understand, for example, in markets where where prices of goods are zero, where markets have multi-sided products, it's extremely difficult to understand and use and need new tools and require an understanding whether the existing laws and the formulation of these laws are adequate for us to carry out this work. But there is also another element is procedural issues, because many of the young agencies are also under pressure to respond to apply and amend or to create fast tracks in situations which might require more substantive, and therefore here expediency and effectiveness might need to be looked at more carefully. So those are the challenges. We looked at the challenges that require from public policy at national level, at the regional level, we look at, those are the issues that rises at the market level for individual countries with the tools that exist right now requiring both economics and law. Next, please. Now, let's look at the how the business, because this is another component of the conference talk today, is business in the post-COVID. It's very interesting. To start the discussion I quote a new research which was published by the IBM Institute for Business Value, which came out last year actually, and what this report, I first quoted there, concluded that business leaders, whether they are reflecting on current condition or future plan, business leaders need to speed up, needs speed and development to have been amplified dramatically. All barriers are being brushed aside under the pressure of disruption, rapidly evolving customer expectation, and unprecedented pace of change. There is really a renewed clarity in their perspective. Motivation is not aspirational, it has become existentials. Now, what does this mean is that this survey is based on 3,400 participants in 22 countries in a very large number of sectors that reflect the economy. And its research identified 5 areas which are key from the business perspective. Now, those new discoveries, which I'm going to just mention, one is the digital transformation, and we just heard one of the presentation early on this. Their future work, transparency and sustainabilities are the key element on which business focus today. And it also gives some useful insight on how business will be working in the post-COVID period and beyond. Now, a thorough understanding of how business executives and how approaches to business development is being seen by the business community clearly would require us to update our knowledge of business and combine it with whether the laws and the regulations that exist at the moment are adequate, are in line and in tune with this preoccupation and understanding of the business community itself. Next, please. And let's look at this, each of the elements. The first one, as we said, is digital transformation. Now, remote platforms, rethinking and making supply chains, shifting manufacture to produce goods, services, and overall adaptability is now mandatory business competency, as well as an accelerated space of change now became the new norms. So clearly this new transformation, which is brought about, and we heard earlier about artificial intelligence and machine learning, etc., how these things are affecting life, and now become the normal way of doing business. The question that will require, and I think this has been faced both by competition agency when they regulate competitive markets, as well as policymakers, questions about protection of data privacy. What is the extent of data privacy? How to protect against big brothers, and how to, at the same time, allow space for business to develop new models that are productive and raise. Those are choices that would require an understanding both of the economics as well as the laws that are most efficient and optimal for this development. The second element is the question that we identify in the survey from the business community for the future, is that the human element is now key to success. Humans lie at the success of business today. Finally, we are back into putting the human being at the center of the business. And this is, I think, an encouraging insight, because sustainable and resilient development is about the welfare of human beings. So if business is now putting the individuals and the human element at the center of business, this is important. And business now think that the largest, the most valuable asset of an organization for it to grow and to develop is on its humans, whether they are staff or customers, such as training customers, improving consumer relations, and the rest. So there again, labor law and working conditions, whether Uber should be considered as self-employed or an employee, what are the costs for retirement, for saving, etc. All these issues now become at the center of business. Should they be shareholder? Should they be just employee, etc.? I think this is something that will require also to develop. The other third element that come out from the work is that the crisis itself have hijacked the cooperated strategy, because according to the survey, which I mentioned, this based on 3,450 executives, 20 countries, 22 industries, most managers in business are become firefighters, focused on the crisis management, workplace safety, security of their own staff and work, etc. Not so much on other issues such as cash flow, liquidity management, and the rest. But this is likely to change because the temporary crisis itself is important. And I think this will require a certain fine-tuning for the policies when we address the question of distinction between short-term needs of business and policy responses to that, and the long-term situation for facing businesses as well. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The other element that is coming out very clearly, and I think this is very important for Indonesia, is that some will win, some will lose, but all of them will require to do it together and not alone. We see, for example, that most situation mirror what we economists call the so-called K-shaped consumer climate. In other words, that many have benefited very fast and move on. And we saw the data that was given by Amazon earlier on about the revenues and the expenditure that has been done, but many were left out behind, particularly the smaller ones. And if you look at the current case that the KPPU is launched against Google platform, is an example of the challenges that abuse of dominance and exclusionary conduct is one area that many are worried about. What place for large, what place for small, what role for unregulated markets. So if the law does not regulate this particular conduct in the market, then clearly it will have an impact on business, not only for those who win, but also for those who lose. And this divide is getting bigger in area. This is something that has come up both at the global level, but also at the regional level and at national level in Indonesia. And the last but not least that has come out, and I think will stay with us for the recovery, is that health is a key to sustainability. Before coronavirus, most strategies, sustainability strategies only focus on environmental issue. But today, and that is on health and pollutions and climate change. But today, consumers today are more concerned also by choosing product and brands that demonstrate authenticity, concern, of course, about environment, but also concern about their own health, personal health. So health and safety has become co-jointed in a new dimension. And of course, this created a more complex definition and approach to what we understand by sustainability in the long run. So those are some of the 5 areas that business themselves have identified and are adjusting to do. So we see that the business environment is a dynamic, evolving, and therefore would require tools that would require also to adapt and to follow the evolutions of businesses and also to evaluate whether laws and rules and regulations are also evolving and meeting the requirement to create the business environment and the recovery that we are looking for. Next, please. So where to go from here? Well, I think the first thing to say is that pandemic was a wake-up call. It has been very painful, created a bitter reality, very costly, but some actually benefited from the pandemic crisis and created incredible windfall. But many other businesses have struggles. I mean, we often only talk about the costs, but we know that some companies become multi-billionaires, those who invented the vaccines, those who were in the health product, etc., and hospitals and others that were private institutions and certain online big businesses have become made enormous and become, I think Forbes that talking that every day there were some 400 millionaires that were created from the crisis, but there are those who lost. So the benefits or the consequences were lopsided as such. But it also that COVID has compounded the shift in distribution of power at the world level and sharpened the strategic competition for the market among different large players as such. And of course, those are now putting pressure on the existing rules and norms that we have been working, and institutions that we have working with them. If nothing is done to update these laws and regulations and adjust to the market, clearly we will erode that stable and the source of prosperity that we have so far. The third element I think I would say here is that a business must accept that it has created into a permanent change that businesses must accept, all businesses, and therefore must adapt to the new environment through investment, through new adoption of technologies and strategies, and update their own business models, and the policymakers must also adjust their laws and rules to the new circumstances. So those, if we are take into account with those factors that I mentioned, I think we can see that there are important opportunities and promises for accelerating growth for our businesses. If, however, we adapt to the systems rather than hope that things will go back to normal, because it's always difficult to predict the future, but it looks like that there is no return back to where we were before. Thank you. Next slide, please. We know also that competition law and policy in the crisis represents another challenge in order to regulate those markets. But the challenge, of course, is how to strike a balance between competing objectives that require not only the interests of markets of few players, but also the collective interests of all holders, not only businesses, but also consumers and certain public interest objective. Next, please. I have only 2 minutes, so I need to move, please. The challenges facing ASEAN countries are similar to all other developing countries, and therefore the challenge required is to combine, as I said, an approach that is both legal and economic and multifaceted, given that the consequences involve broader and sustainability is more complex issue than purely economic or purely legal. Now, ASEAN countries face different circumstances, and therefore no one solution. There is no one size fit all. Each country will have to require and adopt its own policies and solutions for the recovery. Next, please. The survey shows, as I mentioned earlier, that it is important to enable the business and fine-tune the policies and the business model to the new and emerging circumstances of each countries. More concretely, and this is in my last sentence there, I think academics and researchers can help government understand these cross-cutting issues. And for example, BRAWIJAYA University Faculty of Law can, and this could be maybe a follow-up to this conference, create a research platform that brings back and put together both economists, businesses, and lawyers to launch a project that could create what laws and what business models in the current environment are the most useful for understanding and helping government and policymakers to formulate the right business. By collecting data, by bringing people with different skills, lawyers, economists, sociologists, psychologists, scientists, computer science, to work together in developing an approach that is multidisciplinary and multifaceted for the work. I thank you for your kind attention, and that was my presentation, and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Please give a round of applause for Professor Hasan Kakaya, who has comprehensively developed about the current crisis that has been faced by particularly ASEAN countries, and then how he proposed about how ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which has two dimensions, not only legal dimensions, but also business dimensions, and also the challenge of the competitions agencies. Then he later proposed on how the business will be working post-COVID and beyond. So I think this also has combined all the topics that have been presented by the three earlier speakers. And now we have pretty much time for discussions, which is the best part of any international seminar, is interactions between the audience and also the presenters here today. And because this is held hybridly, I would like to first welcome the audience in this room in Jakarta to raise any questions or feedback. And if you have so, please come forward, raise your hands and come forward, bisa berdiri maju Bapak in front of the camera. And so that all of the speakers joining virtually can also see the face. So we have one, and then are there any other questions in the room? Two, Bapak, and three. Okay, I will first just to three questions. Please address and your questions. Jadi namanya Bapak, kemudian institusinya, ditujukan ke siapa, pertanyaannya, dan pertanyaannya apa.
Thank you. I am Idam Kridanusa, a student of Law Faculty, Doctoral Study Program Universitas Brawijaya, Kampus Jakarta, Angkatan 2020. Pertanyaannya saya tujukan kepada siapa saja. How a real action are expected from a lawyer, considering I am a lawyer, or a law enforcement attorney or prosecutor judge in practice of dealing with collaborative business and law to promote sustainable development. We know we are all confused with BRCA. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you to Bapak Idam as a student from PSDKU, Jakarta, for the first questions. I think it's all of the speakers can have a little bit of time to respond since it is not directed to one speaker. And then the second question, silakan Bapak.
Thank you. My name is Yazid Nurhuda. I'm a student of doctoral degree, Faculty of Law, branch Jakarta, University of BRAWIJAYA. I'm sorry. Please apologize that my English is not good, but I try to deliver my concern in English. The first to Dr. Sukarni, I am really thank you for your explanation related to the collaboration of business and law after the pandemic era. You explain more the obstacles of economics due to the pandemic and how development of the law can address the kind of situation. And on your conclusion, you said that law should to protect the nation interest. This is the most things that are very much important to me actually, since the globalization of the era, we cannot control much, the activity in the economics. So, for example, sometimes the business activity can make the breach of Indonesian law, but not in our territory. For example, apa itu? Investasi bodong. I don't know in English, which some people outside from Indonesia do that merugikan banyak investasi di Indonesia. So in this term, how law can react and protect the Indonesian interest. And the second, I also interest in small and enterprises. Since due to the pandemic of COVID-19, we know that Indonesian economic is down, relatively suffer. And some of them, the business of the small and enterprises is also get the impact on their situation. And in this conference, to mengusulkan atau menyampaikan adanya elektronik e-commerce, e-commerce sebagai salah satu bentuk untuk menjembatani, atau perdagangan elektronik, menjembatani small and medium enterprises. But there are, as Dr. Raditya also mentioned, that many action is already taken with Indonesian government, but still not done solve the problem. Since many Indonesian SMEs cannot have the access to the digital, or they don't know how to use the digital for their own interest, to boost the economic. So from the economic and law point of view, how to solve that problem. And the third, I interest in the artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. Since now there are aspects that impacted on the development of artificial intelligence. But I'm not here from the law aspect. What the kind of impact of the development of artificial intelligence in the law aspect? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you to Bapak Yazid for the questions. And last is from the left side is Ibu Dewi.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Nanda. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. First, I appreciate the presentation from the speakers. My first question addressed to Ibu Dr. Sukarmi. You said that as science, legal science bring universal principle, but in its application, it depends on the situation, religious principle, and politeness. My question is, when are religious principles used to solve problem, especially economic law problem? And the second question to Pak Radityo. Pak Radityo, who is first in line that has the responsibility to create normative and cognitive role? And the third question to Ibu Dery. Ibu Dery, I'm so interested with your research topic about artificial intelligence, same with my research before. But in this moment, I want to know your opinion. What things related to artificial intelligence that should be regulated in law? And the last question to Prof. Kakaya. What creative solution do you have in mind to support the recovery process and continue regional cooperation and integration in ASEAN? Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Nanda.
Thank you, Ibu Dr. Dewi Cahyandari, for the questions for all of the speakers today. I will end the first session here from the three audience today. I think the first is by Bapak Idam, who actually asked all of the speakers to, this is a more practical question about how, or the practical actions that are expected from law officers, from officials to sustain development in these times of business at law. So maybe all of the speakers later on can address to that question. And second is from Bapak Yazid, who asks several questions, and maybe Ibu Sukarmi, Pak Radityo, Prof. Hassan, and also Ibu Dery can address about the first is how the development of law, Ibu Sukarmi can address this crisis of situations and how the law should be protected by the nations, because according to Pak Yazid, sometimes it cannot be contrasted in this state. And so how to solve these types of problems. For instance, he stated about what is the English term about that fraud investment, I think about that. And then about the impact of artificial intelligence from the legal perspective. So the regulations needed from IE. And last is from Ibu Dewi, who addressed to Ibu Sukarmi about when or how religious problems can try to solve these economic problems or crises. And then to Bapak Radityo is who has the responsibility to address these issues, particularly in the normative and cognitive aspect of SMEs. And to Ibu Dery is how far artificial intelligence should be regulated in the law. And to Professor Kakaya is about the creative solutions that could be done to face the crisis in ASEAN. So first, I would like to give the time to the first speaker to address and sort of answer all of these questions related to Ibu Associate Professor Dr. Sukarmi. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. The first question for Pak Idam. How the real action for the yes, I think the role of the lawyer, for example, of the all of the lawyer, I think this is very important in this moment. You said that, for example, about the Purka. Yeah, Purka is we talk about the currently our government declare about the undang-undang data perlindungan data pribadi. I think very interesting is we thanks a lot to our government because the X is very important in this now. So many data is very important because the data can use have the value, economic, law, and etc. So I think the human lawyer is must have take part in this moment. And the second question from Pak Yasid, I think a very interesting question about the development of law cannot reach or takes the impact of the, for example, about the crime extraterritorial. Yeah, this. So there is the characteristic of the our law. Some of the acts not can be applied to the extraterritorial, or we call it the national jurisdiction. So in the next time, our act, for example, about the undang-undang ITA can implement in the for out of the jurisdiction. I read a journal. In my journal, I take one theory about the doctrine effect. Like in US, you know that Sherman Act can be applied in another country if give the injury in American economy. So in the next time, I think Indonesia can apply like this. For example, in case of anti-competition law, some of the case can reduce the economic and reduce the benefit for the consumer in Indonesia if we get take cases international cartel, for example. But in our law, cannot the take action in our side, but in our law, just take the Undang-Undang Nomor 5 or competition law can apply it only in Indonesia. And the first. And the second, about the definition of the business sector, just the business sector as activities in Indonesia. So I think doctrine effects is very important to implement it and can bring the business sector can keep the punish from Indonesia if they keep the reduce on or merugikan konsumen Indonesia can be punished. And the second question about the SME, small medium enterprises. Yeah, I think so many effort by government to improve the SMEs because there is can get impact of pandemic. I think it is a big effort how to improve the SME from small to become the medium and the big. If we look at the data, more than 80% the business sector in Indonesia consists of the SME. But why the SMEs cannot grow up? Even the government give some of subsidies, give treatment like poor and etc. etc. I think this is the problem about the culture of the SME. They don't have what is competition culture. Now, the key of the competition, one is innovation, creativity. I think it's very important how to make the SME grow up. And then literacy and digital is very important for them. And the third question about the artificial intelligence, I think is very important. Artificial intelligence is new aspect, and law, I think the law, we don't have act about the artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence now is very, very important to make new activities in digital economic, for example. We know about the algorithm, for example, like Ibu Dery mentioned before. There is the artificial intelligence in aspect, it is subject hukum or not. And how to make the responsibility if someone use the artificial can damage. Yes. So how to prove it is person or not? It is one of the legal aspects. So many legal aspects about artificial intelligence. Ibu Dewi, religious problem can solve the economic problem. Okay, religion principle. Yes, it is. If we look at the Pancasila, this is 5 value, ketuhanan, kemanusiaan, etc. I think it's very important for economic democracy, economic Indonesia. All of the economic base must be based on the religious. For example, because in Indonesia, 19%, more than 19% as Muslim. So the economic based on religious, I think very, very important to improve in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. I think these are very interesting questions and also challenging for me. First, I have to apologize to Pak Idam asking about Bjorka. I think, yes, this is very interesting topics that's currently viral. But however, because since I'm not active on following and it's not my expertise, so I have no capability to answer this, especially in the law. So I deeply apologize for this thing. So, but we can discuss later on during the lunch about my personal perspective. Secondly, from Pak Yazid. Okay, as I summarize, that your concern is about the incapability of law on regulating the current economics activities. Yes, it is. And then the history also archives that many legal and policies always left behind, 2 steps behind rather than the activity itself, especially during the digital activity. Let's say the cryptocurrency, the world already taking part of it, then many practitioners already bought the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and whatsoever, but the law in Indonesia itself, especially in financial regulation, have not yet put focus on it. So this always been happen, and I am aware, and my consideration is if the law policy process not following this business process of this this activity, so from now on until the next future, there will be happen. So how the lawmaker, how the policy maker have to create, have to be innovate, how they are going to formulate the policy. For example, do we still need to use the process in the legislation in the Senate, which always mostly taking a lot of time, a lot of parties having their interests, and then so that during their argumentation in the Senayan, for example, the activities in the grassroots already happen. So it is very, very solid. So I will be giving this big job to you, all of you from the Faculty of Law, because you are someone who are more expert on that. But however, I demand kind of innovative process, not the result, but the process itself, because the process always left behind. So that's my comment, how to solve the incapability. And then about the SMEs that suffer from the pandemic, I think we have to move back first. First, we have to be aware that become an entrepreneur, not always be someone who see the opportunity. Based on the data from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, they believe that entrepreneurs are divided into two kinds. First, the opportunity-based entrepreneur, someone who become entrepreneur because they see the opportunity ahead. So they will be likely to spend a lot of investment of doing that. But second, which mostly found in Indonesia, is necessity-based entrepreneur. Someone who become entrepreneur just because they have no other choice. This is necessity. How do I have to eat tomorrow? How do I survive from this layoff from the business? Which resulting during the last 2 years, the number of new small enterprises are raised up for more than 100%, as I cited from the several government agencies. But however, it's not just a good news. Because why? Because mostly they are become entrepreneurs because they are necessity based. They got fired because they are got fired, mostly got fired, or the money, the sum of amount of money that they usually got is reduced, so they have to get something. The new business come from household. Let's say, for example, the motherhood suddenly cook and then sell it to Gojek apps, and then the number is anywhere. But however, if you're talking about the sustainability of this business, we have to put in the question: do they will be still as an entrepreneur after, let's say, the next 2 years the business getting better? Do they still doing this business, or even they will be apply for a better job? So if we just got happy with this kind of short euphoria, so will be catastrophe for us. We'll be giving a lot of kur, for example, but in the next 2 years, someone, the entrepreneur who apply for kur, let's say, they cannot pay the debt because the business is not built just for the future, but only just for the short term. So for policymaker, I think this is also big alert. Not only a good things today for euphoria, but also a big homework. That's my talk about SME who suffer and then also rising with the e-commerce. And then lastly, from Ibu Dewi, the question is also challenging: who takes this responsibility to create norm and cognitive? For cognitive, I think me, myself, and then almost all of us here, academia, we are someone who take responsibility to provide access, knowledge about the entrepreneurship. Not only the entrepreneurship, any behavior. If you would like to our students to be more critical, to be scientists, so we have to create scientific friendly knowledge. If you would like to next future, there are more opportunity-based entrepreneur. It means the academia should take part of this responsibility. So how? There will be a long debate, so we may need more seminar to discuss about it, but that's my short question. And then about norm, who take responsibility? For the short term, answer, I think netizen, because yes, netizen should be blamed how the new norm happened currently. If, for example, we would like to always take a photo, I think some of you or many of you already took a photo and then post it on Instagram. And then you would like to be applauded that, okay, you are following this international conference or speak or something. Whether you realize or not, that's a new norm that we consciously create this. So who takes responsibility? Us as a netizen. If you would like to create entrepreneurship, so let's create any norm that foster entrepreneurship. Thank you for us. So the chair will be back to Bu Nanda.
Thank you, Pak Radityo, for the answer. And now I'd like to give the time for Ibu Dery to give her response.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think they're very, very interesting and very relevant, especially in today's digital era, right? Where we basically share a lot of data, whether consciously or unconsciously. So I think implications for law and for lawyers is that I think nowadays lawyers need to be aware and know deeply about artificial intelligence especially what data that is being used to create these AI systems, and also how the data is used and what implications can AI systems predictions create. For example, like with the applications that we use, Peduli Lindungi, right, that is created by the government to track people's coronavirus status. We all have to download it. Otherwise, we cannot go to malls and we cannot go to office because we need to show that our Peduli Lindungi, the app, is green before we can enter any of these places. But the implications of such system, right, like the data that is being used, how is it being protected? How is it used? Is it going to be used later to track the movement of people? These kinds of things have implications on the surveillance of the citizens, right? So a lot of things that we have right now are not regulated. A lot of AI systems are not regulated. And just now there is a question, which part of AI has to be regulated? I think all parts, starting from the data itself until the processing of it, until the prediction. Say an AI system makes a prediction that turns out to be wrong, who should be responsible? Is it the AI system, or is it the programmer who makes the AI system, or is it the company who created this AI system in the first place, right? So there's a lot of discussion currently about AI ethics, aside from data privacy. So, you know, starting from data, how is it being collected and stuff like that, until the prediction itself, all of it actually has to be regulated. But so far, I think the first step is already quite good. We now have a law that protects the personally identifiable information, the PDP law, right? So this is the first step, that actually when companies use our data or governments use our data, they need to respect the, first of all, the privacy. That means as a citizen, as a person, we have to have rights to what data we want to share. So, you know, you cannot just get my data, even though nowadays we see this all happening, not just with the app, but also every time you pass by MRT, for example, do you see that your face is being automatically captured via a face recognition system, right? So how are all this data stored? Is it being protected? What if there is another Bjorka, another hacker that hacks into the system, right? So this kind of data breach will keep happening. So what we need to do is actually, as regulation, as lawyer, we need to learn more about what implication of AI systems, and, you know, starting from data to processing to output, what are the different potential risks and benefits from each stage. So yeah, I think, and what kind of, aside from that, AI systems have actually been also used within law itself. So for example, in the US, there is a system that actually helps judges predict whether a criminal will likely commit crime again. So this system is used by a judge to help them decide whether to release a criminal under parole or not, right? But the system has been found to have bias. So the data used to train the system was actually biased towards a particular demographic. So African American are more likely to be predicted as going to commit crime again rather than the white American. So yeah, at the end of the day, that system was like criticized because of all this potential bias in the system. So as a AI scientist myself, I'm like, yeah, the AI itself is not 100%, you know, you should trust the prediction. You have to be really careful starting from what data you use to train, and make sure there is no biases in the data as well as in the algorithm, and then that the prediction is not used to do something that can cause damage to people, right? So aside from that, AI has also been used to do some education, for example, or help lawyers find similar cases. So if they are faced with a particular case, the AI assistant can help them look for previous cases that are relevant to the current case. So this is actually one of the products that one of my colleagues in the US is developing as part of her company's business. So I can give you an example of like this very simple, actually this is still in progress, still in development, but we can now, for example, use AI to help answer questions about law in Indonesia. So this is still in development, so it's not perfect, but I can ask things like hukum narkoba, and then I can ask it, and then it will give me some answer after thinking about it a while. Then it can answer narkoba adalah sebutan umum untuk segala jenis obat-obatan terlarang. And then it says, what is the punishment, the minimum and maximum punishment, and what is the minimum fine. So you can also ask things like, recently there is a lot of things about domestic violence, right? So we can ask, other things. And, so this is just like the first step in this language system, right? That can actually become an assistant to people who needs to know more about law, but do not have the access to it. But this is, like I mentioned, this is still in development, but you can imagine the potential of AI in law, basically. So this is just a glance towards what AI can do to help as an assistant, but also AI needs to be regulated. So it's like a double-edged sword. At the same time, you can use it for good, but it also has to be regulated so that people don't use it for bad, right? I hope this answers the questions.
Thank you, Ibu Dery, for the explanation. And please, Professor Kakaya, for your response.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think the two questions that I could respond to is the difficulty in addressing cross-border control, excuse me, in use of law and economics. And then the second one is on creative solution for regional integration in ASEAN. On the first one, I think the challenges that we face in cross-border control highlight the challenges and the difficulty in reconciling business development and law. We know that business tend to evolve very fast, and regional technological transformation has made it even grow at a faster rate than it does. Whereas law, not only because of procedural issues, but also in general, tend to lag behind. And then you do get this disconnect that business development has taken place at the speed of light, and the regulation that is appropriate for the new business model and new developments are lagging far behind. So this is an area where, an example where development and modernization of laws and research on appropriate formulation of law is absolutely essential, but it should not be done in a vacuum. It must be done in the context of business development, of technological transformations, and this is the challenge that we require. And unfortunately, what we do see is that transactions are taking place and developing all around the world, and affecting countries worldwide. Why? Because business are not, and unlike national law, they are not constrained to the national territory. With the global value change and globalization, etc., businesses start in the United States and they are operating in Singapore, Indonesia, in China, etc., whereas law stay behind that are national in character. This disconnect between national laws and the different speed and adjustment and often different priority as well because of national sovereignty, religious objectives, and other development objectives, this disconnect will remain a very important hurdle to the development of consistent and parallel development, both in business and in law. There are a number of solutions, and many of these solutions require and have been developed either on bilateral level cooperation, where a number of countries have all at the regional level, or also at the multilateral level, where the innovative solution require the development of regional or sometimes multilateral norms and institutions that can seek some kind of convergence in these standards and rules in order to, without necessarily creating harmonization of all laws, because circumstances are different. So I think there are solutions, and I mentioned some of the approaches that ASEAN countries have developed in creating regional norms and institutions to deal with this disconnect between law and development of laws and business models. On the second question of regional solutions for ASEAN countries, again, if we limit, because ASEAN require social, migration, cultural, environmental, etc. But if we limit to the discussion of our topic, which is business and law, I would say that the innovation require some form of coordination at the regional levels. If the recovery that we are talking about require, for example, the development of a common approach to artificial intelligence or the overall digital transformation, it is important that all countries at least have develop some minimum common standards and norms for data privacy, for definition of actors and businesses, etc., that could be used throughout ASEAN countries. Because businesses will operate throughout the level of ASEAN countries. Businesses located, let's say, in China or US or Australia do not view Indonesia as one particular important market for them, or Thailand or the Philippines. They view the entire region as a business environment in which they can do interact and transaction with these poles. So it's very important that the ASEAN countries also view themselves as a platform, as a regional platform for the world together. And viewing the ASEAN countries as a platform for global value chains, for transformations, for new technology, for new interoperability between different systems within the 10 countries would be one type of solution that would require. But of course, there is not one solution for all problems. We need to take sector by sector. But each of these solutions for a particular challenge arising from, as I say, sustainability, the protection of environment, women's rights, participating in the market, developing these common views at the regional level will position ASEAN as a key player in the world, and will allow the other partners to view the ASEAN as one large market of 680 million people with potential youth, population dividends, technological transformations, an environment in which business can operate, where the legal systems and governance procedures are transparent, open. Those factors that I mentioned earlier identified by business community that will attract the environments and make it very at least provide the opportunities. The rest is up to individual countries and individuals to benefit from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kakaya. Ladies and gentlemen, because of the time being, I've been rewarded by the committee that I must end the Q&A session at the moment. Despite there are numerous questions still in the chat box by Bapak Muhammad Lutfi Gifari for Ibu Sukarmi related to the Sustainable Development Programs, and then questions by Ibu Dian Noor for all of the speakers here. We apologize that we cannot address all of these questions today in this forum, but please, we do welcome all of the speakers here today, Professor Kakaya, Ibu Dery, Bapak Radit, and Ibu Sukarmi, to write your emails in the chat box, and so that all of the participants here who later on might want to discuss in detail specifically about a topic from each and one of you, please write your emails in the chat box. Once again, on behalf of the committee, we apologize that because of the time being, later on we will have another session by the participants from the students here in Jakarta to present their papers and have a review. And therefore, I would like to give one last conclusion by each speakers, maybe 30 seconds until 1 minute for maybe not a conclusion, but a closing remark for today's conference. I would like to start by Professor Kakaya, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, first of all, the invitation and for the honor to participate in this very, very important conference. Let me again congratulate the organizer for the event, but also for the selection of the topic. I think this is a beginning of this conversation that is critical for our discussion, not only in Indonesia and ASEAN, but I think worldwide. I hope, and my sincere hope, is that University and Faculty of Law will lead this process in the future by further developing a platform of research and maintaining this dialogue on the conversation and the topic we identify today. And I wish you success in these events. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kakaya. Next to Ibu Dery Wijaya.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I agree the topic is very, very important and very, very relevant to today's world. And I think law will have business and law will have like a center stage, especially in the next decades or so, when we are having all this digital transformation. Yeah, and there's a lot of problems that the world is going to face, including, not only this problem with cybersecurity, but also with misinformation and climate change. So I think, yeah, I'm very glad I got invited to talk here and listen to other speakers, and I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ibu Dery Wijaya. Pak Radityo.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity, of course, to close the remarks about what happened after the pandemic. I think for the policymaker, for the academia, we have to make some policy which promoting people to behave something, because deep inside our heart that we will behave or perform a behavior is if the behavior deliver satisfaction. So for we, all of us, you who become the decision making, please ensure that your policy will be deliver a satisfaction for those who need, for those who are become the object of this policy. Otherwise, your policy will be just administrative things to do. Okay, that's thank you from me.
Thank you, Pak Radit. And last, Bu Sukarmi.
Okay, thank you. I think there is not enough in this time to discuss about the big topic big topic about the business and law. So we follow in the next time. And the correlation on relationship between law and business, it is very close and cannot be stated in order to maintain sustainable development. I think, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Bu Nanda.
Yeah, thank you for all the speakers today. And I think I do not intend to conclude a certain topic of this, but I think we all here agree upon that the multidisciplinary research in the future and discourses like this are very much needed. And therefore, we hope that in the following years, PSDKU can have the second BRAWIJAYA Law Conference on Business and Law. Please support us from doing this. Congratulations to all of you who later on will have presentations on your paper. Thank you for all the participants of today's seminar, for all of your questions. And please once again give a round of applause for our four wonderful speakers, Professor Hakaya, Ibu Dr. Dery, Papa Raditya, and Dr. Sukarmi for the presentations today. See you again in the next agenda, in the next future. All the best of luck for all of you. And thank you very much. I will give the time back to the Master of Ceremony, Ms. Irene.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nanda Saraswati, for bringing us a very productive session today. Dear ladies and gentlemen, for the next session, we will have a photo session for the participant who join in the Zoom. Kindly turn on your camera for a quick photo session. Okay. Dear Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to end of this session. After this, we will have a break session until 2 p.m. and followed by the panel session. The panel session will be shared in 4 breaks room. Please see your schedule. On the behalf of the committee of the first BRAWIJAYA International Conference on Business and Law, we would like to say thank you for your good participation and contribution. Have a great day and see you in the panel session. I'm Irene Limanto signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.